There are claims that an increasing number of people in East Yorkshire and Lincolnshire are getting into debt because they're on 0 hours contracts. One charity in Hull is calling for new rules to stop employers giving people jobs without guaranteed hours. However, many businesses and workers say that the flexibility such contracts offer is essential. Our business correspondent Kate Sweeting has this report.
0 hours contracts are an agreement that employees are given no guarantee about how many hours they'll work, but they're also not obliged to accept any of the hours they're offered. They're common in a wide range of industries. Nicholas Parker from Bridlington worked as a security officer on a 0 hours contract, but not knowing how much he'd be paid every month meant he got into financial difficulty, as the contracts are unreasonable.
You don't know the hours you're working, and then they suddenly expect you to do 70, 80, 90 hours in a week without batting an eyelid, and then drop you again. So it's from, if you like, from feast to famine, which is ludicrous.
This Hull charity calls the contracts a menace and wants them banned.
We're seeing an increasing number of people who are in debt problems and suffering from all sorts of debt-related issues simply because they can't rely on the money that's supposed to be coming in. When you have a 0 hours contract, you do not know from day to day as to what money you might get. And I think employers in the area seem to be taking full advantage of that.
Nationally, the number of people on 0 hours contracts increased by around 20% last year to almost 700,000. In Yorkshire and the Humber, 59,000 people are on 0 hours contracts, 10,000 more than in 2013. But in the East Midlands, which includes Lincolnshire, 48,000 people are on them, down by 2,000 on the year before. The government says that unemployment is falling, but some question whether that's down to an increase in 0 hours contracts. Charities say that some people are becoming trapped on benefits because they can't afford to risk an uncertain income. But some say 0 hours contracts can work for both the employer and the employee.
For me and other students, they are very important because you have kind of a leniency whether you do lots of hours or minimal hours. So it's easy for me to work my hours around university.
If it weren't allowed 0 hours contract, would that be a problem for you?
It would be, yeah, it would be a big problem for me.
Nicholas has now found full-time work, but he's calling for employers to offer more security to staff. Kate Sweeting, BBC Look North in Bridlington.
Well, joining me on this one is Hannah Reid, an Employment Rights Officer for the TUC, and also Sam Bowman from the Smith Institute. Hannah Reid, don't these contracts offer enormous flexibility for employees, and there would be fewer starter jobs if we didn't have them for young people?
Well, the TUC is seriously concerned that millions of people in the UK are now employed in very insecure, casual forms of jobs, which are often low paid. And the concern is that individuals on these contracts, as we've just heard in your interviews, have no idea how many hours of work they're going to get each week, how much pay they're going to take home at the end of the month, which makes it impossible for them to plan financially, to cover their household bills. And more worryingly, they're getting difficulties even getting housing these days as a result.
Sam Bowman, these have sprung up out of nowhere. Are they an attack on workers' rights and dignity, as the Unite union is saying?
No, they're not. It's certainly true that 0 hours contracts aren't right for everybody, and it's a good thing that almost all new jobs that are being created are full-time jobs. But 0 hours contracts can be very helpful for people, particularly young people or second earners in a family, who need to have that flexibility to add a couple of extra hours to their working week to make a little bit extra, but can't commit to a full-time job. Isn't
that a good point, Hannah?
Well, the problem is that all the flexibility with 0 hours contracts is with the employer and none with the individual. We campaigned before Christmas around the issue of 0 hours contracts and spoke to many different workers, most of whom said they get very little notice of when they're needed to do a job, and when they do get notice and they can't turn up to work, maybe because they've got a family commitment, they don't get offered any future work. So many feel they have no choice but to turn up and to be at the beck of call of their employer.
Sam Bowman,
that's not what we call flexibility.
Aren't employers using 0 hour contracts just to avoid any commitments with holidays, pensions, maternity pay and so on?
Yes, to some extent they are, and that's a good thing because it means they can create more jobs. And if the alternative to a 0 hours contract is unemployment, that's bad. But just going back to what was saying a second ago, more people on 0 hours contracts say they're happy with their job than people in full-time work. So I think there might be a question to ask about the general labour force, but 0 hours contracts, if anything, are better than a normal full-time job for the people who are on them.
Well, we know that the inadequacy of the statistics around 0 hours contracts, but certainly trade unions, whenever we talk to individuals who are employed on 0 hours contracts, they really want a permanent job. They want a secure income and they don't want to be faced by low pay.
But it is better to have some jobs, isn't it? I mean, the CBI says that 0 hour contracts mean that there's 500,000 fewer unemployed people than there might have been. That's surely got to be a good thing, isn't it?
Well, we know that there has been a growth in employment. That is welcome. The TUC's concern is that a substantial proportion of new jobs being created are highly insecure and very low paid, which means that millions of workers are not benefiting from the recovery. For example, our research shows that 2 in 5 0 hours contract workers earn less than £111 a week, i.e. they don't even qualify for basic benefits such as sick pay, so they're forced to go to work even if they're ill because otherwise they simply can't afford to live.
Sam Bowman.
Well, that's true about self-employed workers as well. All circumstances are different, but let's just go back to those stats, and we can throw stats around, but 4 out of 5 new jobs are full-time. The idea that 0 hours contracts are somehow creating the reason for the rise in employment is a complete fantasy. It's true, not everybody is right for a 0 hours contract, but if you're a young person who has, maybe you're in full-time education, you need to make a little bit of extra money on the side, a 0 hours contract is exactly what you need. It would be a huge mistake if we let some exceptions, people at the margin, dictate our rules for all people on 0 hours contracts. They would all be a lot worse off.
We must leave it there. We are out of time. Very good to have you both on the programme tonight. Hannah Reid, Sam Bowman, thank you very much indeed. Most grateful. I'll be very keen to get your views on this one. Should 0 hours contracts be stopped? What's your experience if you're working on one of those?